I am live. It looks like my microphone is working, and well, it's great to be here live. I think I'm the only one in the room, but that's perfect. And it actually connects up to what I wanted to talk about today. So if you're listening back to this, thank you. And gosh, where do I start? I wrote a few things down that I wanted to talk about today, but to maybe kind of put a container on this or put some boundaries on this. About a year ago, just under a year ago, I started a small experiment with a few people that were clients and people that were interested in my own meditation practice and my own awareness practice. Some of the questions I got when I went to seminars or when I was at workshops and stuff was people were saying to me, "You just have such a calm presence. I feel relaxed around you. Where did you get that from? Was that kind of natural to you?" And it really wasn't. In fact, if anybody, old friends that are watching this or catching up with where I'm at in life, they might be laughing right now because I was the type of guy I played basketball. I was the type of guy to get two or three fouls really quick. And in fact, during my senior year, when we were having the celebration dinner, my coach, my high school basketball coach, said way back then, "Mark will probably pick up two fouls coming up to the podium here to get his award." So I haven't always been calm. I haven't always been balanced. I haven't had that kind of warmth of presence. It's something that I've created. It's something that I've been lucky enough to have a meditation teacher from Tibet really helped me tune that in. And of course, putting my time in on it, just like anything, working out, doing exercise, or just being present full with your family or your friends, it took effort and it still does. I guess I kind of call it my invisible influence in the work I do now as an executive and leadership coach. So when I started this awareness lab, it was kind of around that idea of being a lab, a place where we can practice. It wasn't meant to be a course. It wasn't meant to be something, a container, or something where people had to show up like a meditation group together either, really. And it really wasn't about therapy or some of those healing modalities or tools. It was more like that idea of a laboratory. It really was around this idea of where we could get a small handful of thoughtful people, professionals, where we could encourage each other to pause for a little while and deeply explore something that most of us, a lot of us, a large percentage of us rarely take the time to look at directly: our own awareness. And many of the people that joined or reached out and were interested were leaders and financial leaders and managers that I connected with, other coaches, even people in the sciences like engineer and computer science, and even some entrepreneurs and business owners. They really were busy people and very capable people, but also people that had a lot on their mind and tons of projects and appointments on their calendars. Their minds were really full, but many of them reached out to me individually or an email and shared that they were really quietly exhausted, not just physically exhausted or in the body, but a sense of mentally exhausted. Kind of that exhaustion that comes from chasing your tail or chasing that tail of your thinking, living in that constant state of thinking and planning and maybe remembering and regretting and ruminating. So instead of offering, more productivity tools or even hacks, I really started listening to people and wanted to provide them with simple awareness practices. A lot of the tools came from my background in studying Buddhism and practicing with those methods, those tools, and some of the Buddhist psychology. Things like simple things like just short pause breaks, consciously taking a breath, slowing down, and then almost turning that spotlight of our awareness towards ourselves, observing the activity of our mind, and really kind of dropping that hyper productivity thing that we have in the West, whether it's in business or making our families ideal or whatever, but just not trying to fix anything. By slowing down and just noticing what's actually happening inside our lived experience, getting in touch with the emotions that might be active right now, and kind of reducing the bias towards negativity or hypercriticalness. Some of these sessions were really quiet and reflective. Some of the sessions turned into deep conversations with people that were with me those days. And it circled around things like leadership, um, how awareness can change our stress, and even things like our identity when we sit to practice, or our self talk, the voice that comes online when maybe we're a little frustrated by a coworker, or we're irritated by our kids or our family or friends. But almost every session that we had in the lab, every time we got together for our weekly lab work, one thing pointed to the same discovery almost every single week. And it's this: that most of us live entirely in that thought, that energy of movement of mind. And really, when we start slowing down just to observe our thoughts, just to be present and familiarize ourselves with that energy of our mind, instead of needing to automatically believe that we are our thoughts, when we just come back to awareness and just almost letting the activity of the mind settle, there's something that changes. One of the core insights people shared with me and they discovered on their own and through the lab is something that was really surprisingly simple in the awareness lab. We are not our thoughts. We are not the movement of the mind. We are not that energy that might surround the thought. Because the fact is, thoughts appear almost like a cloud in the sky. And then they move through that skyline of our mind, or that open awareness of our mind, and then they disappear. I know, and with my own felt experience and being lucky enough to have a great teacher and a great lineage, but awareness is something that notices those thoughts and realizes it is something different. So when people started to feel that and begin to see that clearly, even just for flashes of moments, they start to realize how much of their stress and their anxiety came from their believing and defending that this is me, this is the way I am. They went from believing every thought is them to noticing that it's just appearing in the mind. And listen, let's be right up front. This work in the awareness lab or in your own awareness lab, it doesn't absolve us or remove the challenges of our life. Not at all. I think there's a lot of mindfulness teachers and programs, and there's just a lot of crap out there. But the fact is, it doesn't remove those negative, troublesome challenges in our life. But it does change that relationship to the challenges. It changes the relationship we have with being knocked off balance. So, again, over the past year, creating this closed small group, we explored a number of different themes in the lab, things that I brought from my teacher and my lineage and practice. But one of the first things people noticed was how disconnected they might be from their own body. Many of us spend most of the day in our heads, right? Planning, thinking, remembering, analyzing, dissecting, maybe berating ourselves, maybe hating on somebody else. And again, I'm not saying any of those things are necessarily all bad, but when we start just by grounding ourselves and grounding our practice by feeling the body, by coming back to the body, by noticing the quality and the energy of your breath, and letting your mind settle and pay attention and concentrate just on the breath. People were surprised, and I was surprised hearing back from a few of the members. They were surprised at how quickly just that one simple shift of paying attention to the breath, catching when your mind is moved, and coming back to the breath, how that simple little exercise could build up a nice muscle so that you could bring yourself back to balance in tough moments. Again, it doesn't mean you're absolved from the challenges or negative things, but it comes back to taking care of your own energy and you're coming back to your body and realizing like, oh, I am frustrated, or I'm checking out, or I feel depressed and sad or angry. That simple shift of returning to the breath is a very, very powerful balance practice and a grounding practice. One other theme that I kind of hinted at the beginning was this idea of self-talk. We explored that in a few of our sessions, and it kind of is a permanent theme, right? Maybe we get on YouTube, and I know I do. I love to scroll and watch and see how people are using practices. But the good teachers, the ones that are kind of going to the root of the problem, they're exploring how we talk to ourselves. There's a lot of professional, well-meaning, well put together people that have amazing lives externally, but they discovered something when they began observing or listening to that inner dialogue. And it takes practice. But when we start to notice that voice in our head, and we see that it might be far more critical and demeaning and aggressive than any boss or any manager, or any colleague, or any partner we've ever had, that can be troubling. The fact is, we can be our own worst advocate many times, or we're lashing out at the external world. All these things are happening to me. So the lab work, coming back to the awareness, this gave people space and a sense of relaxation just to notice that voice that's dominating the energy or the dialogue and what they're getting kind of pushed around by. We also kind of explored attention. Attention meaning where we put our mind. Because where our attention goes, our life tends to flow and bloom in that area. So many people realized how fragmented their attention had become, right? Maybe watching too many YouTube videos, switching to a book, watching TV at night, rushing through dinner. People are pulled by devices, by notifications, by events, by news cycles, and these constant loops of stress. So when people started to intentionally connect with their body first, notice maybe some of that energy, but then start to guide their attention. When we started to do that, people shared that their days felt a little different. And even towards the end of this past year and some of the later sessions, we went into some of the more challenging practices and some of the more challenging things that we can work on in our awareness. And that was the idea of mudita, Mudita. And it comes from Sanskrit as a word, but it was this ability from Buddhist psychology to genuinely feel joy and happiness for another person's success. It sounds really simple when you say it, right? And maybe we think we do that by, applauding somebody or giving a thumbs up. It does sound simple, but it can reveal something deeper in our awareness, because when we try to practice that honestly and with heart, we can sometimes discover that underneath it is this kind of pool of comparison, maybe a little toxic comparison. Maybe there's some insecurity or even this idea of scarcity. I don't have what I need yet. And those can kind of boil or bubble underneath the surface from this idea of celebrating somebody else. And really, the purpose of the Awareness Lab was never to pretend or fake that these feelings weren't there. It was simply to become aware of them. Again, to turn that spotlight of our awareness towards ourselves and invite people to open their hearts and open their minds in ways that maybe they haven't ever learned or they were never shown. Again, throughout the year, through these sessions, I kept hearing back from people, and they began sharing some really interesting feedback and reflections with me about how these small little tiny practices of awareness, this little bit of lab work, how it was affecting their lives. Some of the things they said was, I felt more grounded throughout my day. And others even wrote back or shared with me verbally that the small breathing practices finally made meditation something that they could approach instead of something mysterious or shrouded in some ancient, incense-filled hall. Breathing and slowing down for 2 to 3 minutes is meditation. Kind of reframing it. And a few other people even realized that they could observe those thoughts without getting caught inside of them. We aren't the content of our thoughts. Rather, we're the awareness behind it. And then a few other people said something that I found very meaningful and reinforcing and helped me in my own practice. They said this lab work helped them reconnect with something they already knew, but it's almost like they've forgotten. And I think back to what I shared at the top, this idea of inner influence. If you're out here searching for things to make you better, thinking you need to add, I'm missing something, it's just not true. You've basically forgotten your innate goodness and your compassion and the part of you that's just wanting to relax and open up. And really, I don't see myself as somebody who's delivering answers in this space. I'm not. I see myself more as somebody who has spent many years exploring awareness and meditation practices And at this point, I just want to invite people to experiment with what I've been using and growing with the past decade or more. But really, I am one of the participants. Every time I come to the lab, it reminds me again and again how easy it is to get pulled back into mental noise and how it can be really powerful just to simply pause and ground yourself and notice and practice in a sense. So, if you're someone who feels this mental congestion or this overload, this burnout, this constant thinking, this rumination, or you just feel like you're stretched in 10 directions during your workday, or even when you get home, when you're supposed to be relaxing and enjoying the family, just learning to pause and observe our mind and the contents of our mind can be surprisingly powerful. So, this is what I'm doing. Instead of kind of keeping this group hidden and in a subscriber mode, I'm bringing it out. And I'm going to be hosting these talks weekly on YouTube. And I will have these posted and shared. And this place, the Awareness Lab, will continue to be that place where we can explore these practices together. Again, simple awareness practices, honest conversations, places where we don't have to pretend or perform. And it's just really a place and a chance to slow down and remember something deeper, something bigger than that constant no rumination or worry that might dominate our mind. And really, if you're interested in this, I want to keep this open and free. But if you'd like to join me live on a call and explore some of these practices and these ideas and share your own experiences, I'd love to invite you. So I'll throw a link in my this description of this. So watch it. Reach out. I'd love to have you on the live lab and we can explore this together and bring it to more people. And really, this changes the quality of our life. As a dad who was very frustrated, as somebody 10, 15 years ago who was really ruminating and worried and trying to find a solution to it, I was lucky enough to find friends and find people that helped me. And I want to do that for others so they can have that inner influence and that grounding and that space in their between their thoughts to know that they're more than the contents of their thoughts and minds, and they are the awareness and the openness and the compassion that is behind it. Now, before we close, let's take 1 minute together. If you'd like, you're welcome to close your eyes if that feels okay, or just cast your gaze downward a little bit. And I'd like you to pay attention and notice your breathing. Notice that coolness of the breath at the nostrils and slow down that out breath. And when we do that, we notice that there's thoughts that come barging in or come rushing in. Just watch how those thoughts come and then go. And in a sense, notice the awareness that notices the thoughts. Tap into that awareness that is observing the thinking that is already going on. That is simply noticing your awareness. That is familiarizing yourself with the quality of your mind. And that is the laboratory. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for watching this. Again, if you'd love to be in the lab, or even if you're curious about this, reach out on the link I'll provide. And I hope to see you in the lab. Otherwise, stop back and catch some of these live sessions or these recordings, and know that you're not alone, and that you can improve the quality of your awareness and the depth of presence and calm in your life. Excellent. I hope you have a great day or a great evening wherever you're at. And I will see you next time on the Awareness Lab. All right. Bye bye.